it's a meme. It's a meme. Okay, YouTube family. I had to record the whole video. I'm recording the whole video. That was 40 minutes. I don't know how I ended up deleting it. But I'm back to redo it for y'all now. So this is BMF, Point of No Return, and that's season 4, episode 9. So Loco, Meech, and T, they are all in the car. And then the Mexican cartel starts pow-powing at the car and unalives the driver while driving. Wow. And then Detective Brian, he finds Laz's body. And then T talks to Meech about Laz, and Loco says T, Purdy, and Pusha are all rats. And then that ain't he's saying that people are all rats and all this stuff. I said, okay, T. I mean, he's smart now. He's smart. But T says that they need to cancel the California trip. And then Meech says that they need to send food to Laz's grandma, and then they need to pay for the funeral too. He just ignored T. I mean, what else is new, y'all? And then T says that Lucille. T says that a snitch does not get his funeral paid for. He still think that Laz was a snitch. Okay, I'm like, okay. And then he said, I'm not going to pay for, no snitch's funeral. And then then me said, shut the F up, T. And then he said, Laz is family until proven guilty. Until proven innocent. Innocent until proven guilty. And on his book, he said that he's still innocent and he's still family. So, miss him with that. I said, okay. And then Breeze, Nicole, and Lucille, they are at the hospital, and Nicole is contracting bad. And she was saying, it hurts. And then Breeze says, well, the nurse said, let her know when your contractions are 5 minutes apart and not 15 minutes apart. And then, hold on, y'all. And then Lucille says that, well, we need help. We need some help. My baby is in labor and she needs help. And I'm like, yeah, she do need some help. But it didn't seem like she was finna get no help at that point in time. My light went out, y'all, so I'm finna turn it back on. Because I need my light. Okay. So, she says that, I guess it's gonna have to charge. But she says that her baby needs help and she can't be waiting, pretty much. And I'm like, okay, Mama Lucille, she can't be waiting. And she do need some help. So I'm like, she did right by sticking up for her baby. And then she was just pretty much telling her, well, they're backed up and Nicole will have to wait for her name to be called. Okay? She said she's gonna have to wait for her name to be called. And then Lucille just sit there and then she just started looking. I'm finna pull up. She just started looking, and then what she does is she says that she needs help. And then Breeze and Nicole, okay, hold on. Breeze, Nicole, and Lucille, of course, they at the hospital, and she is contracting bad. I all backed with. Okay, I was off of that. So Brian, aka B Mickey, is up at Meech's house, and then he does see Meech's father. And Charles, he really pretty much don't have nothing for B Mickey, because of course, Meech told him about how B Mickey is moving, and you know he don't want to hear nothing pretty much from B Mickey. And then Charles instantly paid attention to the fact that he was strapped. And I'm like, yeah, he is strapped. And he said, well, we can't do nothing. And then he also said that it was a family. It was families that needed the help. And since you are back in the streets and you strapped, then we can't pretty much help you. I said, well, rightfully so, because he can't help him. And I understand exactly what he was talking about. And he said, you have a good day. I said, And then B Mickey pretty much says, and by the way, I'm grateful. I am grateful for what you did for us. What you did for us and the family. And then Charles just keep looking. And then Charles calls T and Meech. And, you know, because Nicole is in labor. And then Lucille called and told him to get his ASS on the plane and get out there so he can help her with Nicole. And I'm like, okay, girl, okay. He gonna get there though. Just know he gonna get there. And then he writes a note to Meech and T, because he tried to call both of them and he wasn't able to get neither one of them on the phone. So when he write that note, then he get a little bit of cash from them. And he get that cash from them, then he go ahead and write that note, and then he on the plane. And then Meech tells Loco that while Ish is rough in the A, he needs Loco, you know, to stay there. And then T is still saying, don't go to Cali. And then Meech says that where he disagrees with his baby bro, he says that he still needs to go to California and meet with Loco's boss, which is Manuel. And he trying to see how they can, you know, further they, you know, stuff down in California and just go ahead and push it. Because, you know, it's good down in Cali. Everything is good in California. And then they pretty much talking, because, you know, Meech know a little Spanish. And then T know Spanish too, obviously, because they was calling him fat. And he said, y'all ain't got to be sitting up there calling me fat. Don't think I don't know y'all calling me fat. I'm like, no, he not fat. You not fat, T. He just got a little weight on you. And Meech comes back, and his girlfriend says, your dad left a note. And she says, you know, since what happened with Purdy, I just know that life is too short. And I just realized I just want to spend the rest of my life with you. And then Meech brushed her off. And when he brushes her off, then, I mean, he don't want to hear nothing that she's saying. And I said, girl, I know how that can feel. I do know how that can feel. And then she says that life is too short, of course. And then she says that she wants to spend the rest of her life with him. And then he sends the, you know, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking message that he cares about her a lot. Yes, he really does. But he said family is more important to him right now. And he said that his family needs him. And she said, oh, so you in big Meech mode now. You in big Meech mode now. And then he says, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And then he said, I know it's a lot of stuff that came between us and all that stuff, but I think we should just go to the, you know, palace together and we just, you know, knock it off. We can go to the palace for a couple of hours and then we can just knock it off and just have a good time. And she said, oh, so you want, okay. She said, okay. You want a party, girl. Go find yourself a party girl, because that ain't me. And then she leaves. And I'm like, rightfully so, girl. Don't let him play all up in your face just because he cute. But don't let him play up in your face, girl. He'll come back. He'll come back one day. He'll come back. And then the palace is in full effect. And then everybody having a good time and all that. Then all of a sudden, drinks is flowing and all that stuff. And then Meech tells the bartender that she is his hero. And then she said, okay, Big Meech. He said I get off at. She said I get off at 5 a.m. And then you know what happened at 5 a.m. He bring her to the house, and then he do a little cook a little breakfast for her in the early morning. Then they bang each other's backs out and all that. I said, And then Bryant, and he is looking at the footage from outside the palace. And he was like, okay, pause it right there. I know exactly who he is. That's B. Mickey. Brian B. Mickey. And he is a loyal member, a person outside of BMF. And he one of they down folks. He down for that group. And I'm like, oh, he's so obsessed. And then Hardy asked, well, what you want me to do? What we gonna do now? He said, okay, we gonna put out an APB on Brian, aka B. Mickey, and we gonna locate him. I'm like, okay. And then Nicole, Breeze, and Lucille, the nurse says that her heart rate is dropping and she has to have an emergency C-section. And I said, oh, Jesus, dear God. And then I was just praying and praying and praying and praying. And you know, emergency C-section, you know, Breeze, he has to leave because only immediate family can go. And then Lucille goes with, you know, Nicole. And then they finally cut to California, and then they see the Hollywood sign. You know, Terry is enthused about that Hollywood sign. I'm like, yeah, I would too. His first time in Cali, and he is just amazed by it. I said, I would be too. And Meech he said, boy, in Cali. I said, okay, he in California, love all the way. And he's saying, his friend saying that you can sell out here, but you gotta watch your colors. And then Meech said, okay. And then he said, see, the red is the bees. And then he tells him that the blue is the seeds. So you gotta pretty much watch your color. And you have to watch colors and all that stuff. And I said, wow. And I'm like, alrighty then. And then they see, you know, of course, the Hollywood sign, and T is excited. And then they finally do meet with Manuel. And when they meet with Manuel, he talks his talk and everything. And he tells them, you know, about the address. And then he tells them they're going to be able to do business and stuff like that. And gives them the address. And then Nicole and Lucille are in the emergency room where she's having her C-section. And then Nicole has the baby, and then she don't hear the baby crying. And she was like, I don't hear the baby. I don't hear the baby crying. What's wrong? Something's wrong. I don't hear the baby crying. I don't hear the baby crying. And then she said, and then the doctor, he pumps on the baby. And then he started to cry. And then the doctor says that he inhaled a bit of, mucomin that was blocking the baby's airways. But she has a healthy, beautiful baby boy. And then she whispers, Demetrius. And I said, And he is just a crying. And I said, uh-oh, Grandmama Lucille is in with that beautiful baby. And I'm like, grandbabies always bring out the good. And Grandmama's like Lucille. And then, this one we get in the transition, y'all. Because older Meech is talking. And then they arrive at the farm. And he said between 1985 and 2005, Magic Johnson was on, and Magic Johnson hosted a Midsummer Night Magic, and then a yearly charity event. and then a black tie dinner also. And then a fight erupted in that club. And then bottles swinging and all that stuff. And, you know, Meech jumped up. And then, you know, he had to have his bottle. And he had to hit somebody in the head. Hit the man so hard that he fell to the ground. And his tooth came out. And then as soon as, you know, because they were snatched, you know, moved out the club. And as soon as Meech got in the car, he said, "Thanks for the help. Thanks for the help, T." And then T pretty much said, "I'm not finna be fighting nobody's battles." Okay? He ain't finna be fighting nobody's battles. And then T thanks, you know, he said, "Thanks for the backup." And then T says that he ain't finna be fighting nobody's battles. And he says that, you know, Manuel is family. So that's why he was in there fighting. That's why he was in there defending. I'm like, Meech, shut the hell up. And then we find out that the dude's name was Big Shot. And he is one of them bees that was in the club, and he knocked his tooth out. And he said he was trying to rob him too. And then they are, you know, sliding, you know, because he said, "Well, what you want to do?" And then Meech said, "Okay." He said, "We can just slide." And, you know, his friend, he was just saying, "We can just slide," and all that. And then he said, "Yeah, I can handle it myself. We can slide and just be on, you know, neutral grounds." And then we get to, he said he gonna handle his stuff. Then we get to the baby, which is Big Mickey's daughter, V. And she is playing on the swings. And then she is on, you know, just on the, I forgot what you call it, where they sit down and then they just be rolling and rolling and rolling. Just on the love. It's like a circle, and then you just, it's not merry-go-round. She was on the merry-go-round too. But then somebody didn't snatch the baby. And she was like, V, where are you? V, because I'm telling you, she looked to the left for a few seconds to talk to her friend. Then when she looked over again, she didn't see her no more. And then Meech they introduced themselves because Meech said, "Okay, I can be like the Black Escobar." So, Meech always thought a lot of himself. He's singing his cute self. He cute though. And then he tells, you know, well, hold on, y'all. So Meech introduces himself, and then he tells the bees that, you know, he is coming with some facts now. And then about how they need to come together and how they need to come, you know, together to make money. And then he understands that they know about the color. He said understands that they know about the colors and they want to spit about the colors and all this and this and that. But he says that he thinks color collaborations is better, you know, collaborations is better than competition. And then he says that together they can get paid. And then of course, you know, one of the little bees, and I guess he was the leader, he said, well, we get money, we don't need your help, and, you know, he was giving him pushbacks so hard. And then I'm like, and then Meech says, well, BMF, we got them pure white girls. And ain't no downtime work coming in fast. Because he said ain't no downtime and the work is coming in faster than we can move them. And then T says, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. And he said that's why BMF gonna keep running around y'all ninjas. And then says you wanna keep getting ran over, or you wanna, you know, ran in laps around, or you wanna join the race. And then B. Mickey's wife, of course, she reports the information to the police to look for their daughter. She give her all the information needed. And then Lamar, as soon as she get back to her house, Lamar is in their house. And he looking for B. Mickey. And then he spit all this stuff saying, well, we're working together. We working together. And we was working together to take down Meech and T. And where's B Mickey? She says she don't know. And he says, you a dad, B. I appreciate that. I respect that. He said, I had me one once upon a time, but she betrayed me. And he didn't say that he had to put her down. Like, my girl cashed off. And then he says that they ain't been good for some time now. Well, hold on, y'all. I'm telling y'all the wrong stuff. And then he tells her that the dog. Okay, hold on, y'all. So Lamar took the little girl, and she didn't even got to the apartment yet. Lamar took the little girl, and she's in the car, and he just told her, the little girl, that he is a friend of her father's. And he told him, he said, your father told me to come pick you up. You know, little kids, they so impressionable and all that stuff. And he gives her a stuffed dog and all that. And then he gonna sit there and say that the dog's name was Blackie. I said, oh my goodness, have mercy. That was his old dog. I said, Lamar is crazy, y'all. And then we gonna get back to, and then he asked her, what did the dog say? She said, roof, roof. And then Meech and T, they hit the beach. And then they say, you know, everybody looking at the boobies. And then they say, and then they were schooled and told that, you know, wow, the West Coast, they got the boobies. But down south, you know, they got the butt, they got the ass. And they got the titties on the west side. And he said, if you touch them the wrong way, it may hurt. I said, all right then. Fake. And, and then we gonna get back to, because they was just pretty much talking all that stuff, walking down the beach, looking at the women and this and this and that. You know, T, you know, he probably he was looking. And then Dr. Vaughn, Detective Vaughn finds B. Mickey's car at the hotel, and he's just saying he went in the hotel room, and then they look all through the hotel room, right? And they look all through, and then Hardy just pretty much say clear. And then, you know, Detective Vaughn, he ain't done. He don't be done. And he just constantly looking. And then he said, then when he was constantly looking there, Hardy looked, because they both looked behind, you know, Hardy looked behind the bed in the trash can. And then that's when Vaughn said clear. But then when he was about to walk out the door, he had, you know, he started thinking about when his son was unalived. And then he was thinking about when his son was unalive, right? He was thinking about that gun, that pow-pow. And then Detective Vaughn said, I hear something. And what do you know, the pow-pow was in the dark air conditioner at the hotel room. I said, oh Lord. And then B. Mickey started coming, and everything just a jangling. Everything in his bag was just a jangling and all this stuff. And then when he recognized, he looked at the car first, and then he saw that the door was open, and then he said, fuck. And then he took off running the other way. He went down this way to the left, straight, and bust the left. And then Brian says that B. Mickey gonna be a hit up in prison because of this pow-pow. And he said that it could get misplaced on its way back to evidence. Now this was going back And you know, Bryant was just thinking about stuff that happened in the past. And then Brian thinks about, you know, evidence. And then Brian thinks about his son. Of course, I already told y'all all that. And then he is asking, what do he want to do now? What more do he want to do? And then he said, B. Mickey. Of course, B. Mickey started walking. I already just told y'all that. I was just remembering from what I remember. And then B. Mickey's wife is in her apartment finally, and Lamar up in the apartment. And of course, he looking for B. Mickey because he's spewing that crazy mess, talking about some. Well, you know, me and B. Mickey, we were supposed to both take down Meech and Terry. And I'm like, while that could be true, while it could be, while we do know that Lamar is loco, crazy. And then he telling her that he asking her where is B. Mickey, and she said she don't know. He said, yeah, you were down at B. He said, I had me one of those once, but I had to put her down because she betrayed me. And then she keep on saying she don't know because she really don't know. She know, but she went and tell him. And then she said, where's my daughter? Tell me that you didn't do nothing to hurt her. And then he picks up the phone because she wasn't giving him no information. Then he picks up the phone and, and he said, B. Mickey is running out of time. Okay? He said, I'm running out of time. And then he picked up that phone and he called Peachtree Hotel. And he asked for, you know, the Addy. You know, because when he found out that both Meech and T was both in the A, then he get their hotel. She gave him the address down to Georgia. And then he asked, what be Mickey doing in Atlanta? And she says that he is there looking for Meech and T so he can finish what y'all started. And then he said, they all down there together? She said, yeah. And then Nicole and her child's father, which is Breeze, and Charles, they're in the room, and she says that looks just like his daddy, right, Dad? Dad Charles, he struggles to say it, but he says, yeah, he's a handsome boy. Of course he does. And he says, thanks, Mr. Flannery. And then Breeze then says that, well, when we get everything set up at the apartment, y'all will be the first people at the apartment. Then, you know, Lucille said, but you just had your C-section. You just had your C-section. I was helping you with your C-section. Like, she got to stay at the house. So, all right, Lucille, so you can mentally abuse her? No, ma'am. And she got a baby, too. If you want to see that baby, you're going to have to come to her and Breeze's house. He already said that y'all can be the first two people. And then Charles just broke on down and he just gave, you know, the baby a stuffed animal. And then he motioned for Lucille. And then she just looked. And then I'm like, hit it, Lucille. Get gone. And then Loco is in line. He is on the phone with Meech, and Meech is asking, did he handle everything in the A? And he says, yes. And then Meech asks, is he gonna be out there, you know, pretty soon? And he said, see. And then Loco says, then, you know, he said he'll be there. And then his car explodes. As soon as he put that in the ignition, it was a pow. And I'm like, oh, Lord. And then Markeisha and her friend, they having drinks and all that. And then she congratulating her friend on, you know, being successful in college. And she said, well, how you been doing? How you and Boone doing? She said, well, Markeisha said, well, I just started a business of my own. And then she said, well, I'm so happy for you and Boone. And then Markeisha said, well, it's really not a business with Boone. And then her friend Kiki said, Southwest T, you know, the streets been talking, girl, and it ain't pretty much hard to know. Streets been talking. streets been talking, or you been talking to Boom? You'll see what I'm saying in just a second. And then they both leave. And then she said, okay, yeah. Because, you know, some men, they young. And then she said, well, T, I know he may be young, but he pretty much know his stuff. And then she said, and Boom, he young in all the wrong ways. I'm like, okay then. You gonna regret that in a second. And then T, Meech, and, you know, T and Meech, they are welcome into, you know, Manuel's home. And then that's when Meech said he gonna be the black Escobar. And then they both be just, you know, talking business and all this stuff about how they gonna work their ways around and all this stuff. And he agrees, you know, Manuel agrees that, you know, well, I will do your distro here in California. Because he said trust is all trust. So you have to trust. A good working relationship is all built on trust. And then he said, I agree. And he said, you passed the test. And then he said, okay, well, you should be able to vouch for us because, you know, Loco, he vouched for us. And he said, well, Loco is not with us no more. And he said, now you just got to handle everything that you got going on in Atlanta and then come on back down to Cali. And then once we come on back down to Cali, then I got you. And I said, and then that's when Meech says, he told us everything. He told us everything. And then he said, I mean everything. And then Markeisha is in the car and she driving. And then somebody hit her. And oof. She was just really driving and then she get hit by none other than her fine husband, Boom. And he said, I got you now. I got you. I got you now. Now you gonna listen. How you gonna, cause she snaked him and I've been telling y'all that she was working on both sides. And none other than her friend that she thought that she helped with the money to send to college and all that stuff and school and shit like that. She was effing her husband cause he told her. And he said, hey, how you gonna put money in T's pocket and not put money in your husband's pocket? He said, you betrayed me. And she said, help me. Help me. Can you help me? And I'm like, yeah, you need to help her. And then he didn't want to help her. He said, I love you. I loved you. I love you. I really love you. I love you too. But can you please help me? And I'm like, did he help her? Who knows? I don't know. One more episode after this one. And then they just panned off from them. And then Meech is soaking on his bed. And he was saying, you know, then T say, yo, you okay? And then Meech tell Loco's family. And Meech says, Loco is family. And that was his family. Yeah. And then T said, yeah. And he said that you told Manuel about needing to know everything. And he said, that's bullshit. And I'm like, everything was bullshit. You about to hear. And then he says, but Demetrius, we started all this together. And then he pretty much said that you ain't making good decisions, Demetrius, because you're not. Because he says that everybody that you bought in, though. He then, well, hold on, Demetrius cussed him back and said, well, don't nobody want to work with you. And then he also, Meech said, everybody that you brought in, Purdy, Laz, all of them are either DEA or in jail. And he said, don't nobody want to work with you. I said, okay, Meech, we're not going to do this, okay? And then Meech says that he needs to shut the F up and he calling dad. And then Charles is holding a baby. And he says that he saw the note, and Nikki has, and he asked, how is Nikki? And he said that Nicole is fine, and she's just getting bandaged up by y'all mom. Her mom. She getting bandaged up. Of course he knows she getting bandaged by Lucille. And then he asked him how long is it gonna be before he get there. And then he said that he'll be on his way. And then as soon as he couldn't wait to get out the phone, because as soon as Charles told him that Laz dropped by and all this stuff, and he just pretty much told him, and then, instantly Meech said, oh, so he get out the phone with his dad, and then he instantly Lambert on top. Just bit his head off, and he said, so you was working with B. Mickey behind my back? So I get it now. He was the one. It was always him that was, doing this and doing that. And you was working behind my back. I'm like, me, shut up. And then he said, so you was okay with B. Mickey coming to the house in Atlanta. You was the reason why. And he asked T, did he know already? And he said, did you don't lie, T? And T said, yeah, because, his daughter was sick and he needed money. And he said, so you let him work? And he said, okay, I got it now. He said him and B. Mickey was working together. And he didn't say that. Hold on, I don't want to tell y'all the wrong thing. And yeah, because he said, okay, T, okay, then he said, because T, he said him straight, and then he said, with the truth. And then Meech, all these outsiders that you let in, and then you treat them like Blood, Purdy, Pusher, Laz, and all of them are either in jail or unalive. That's where that part came from. I said it too soon. And then, of course, he wasn't trying to hear nothing that he was saying because he bullheaded and all that stuff. But being honest and speaking, T just shrugged it off. And he just said, how we going to put everything back together? How we going to work on putting this back together? And then he shoots off on T. But he sits him down again. And he said, everybody he's seeing is either unalive or in jail. And then Meech say, nobody want to work with you and all this stuff. I already said that. I said that too soon. And then Meech say, we're going to get the work so we can, work with Manuel and our whole organization, distribution organization is at risk. And, then T said, well, what it's going to do for our business? He said, well, our whole organization is at risk. And then Vaughn, he has the pow-pow, and he submits the pow-pow for evidence on B. Mickey. And I said, see, that's what your wife was telling you, Brian. Brian, that's what your wife was telling you. She said, don't work with T and Meech. She said it. And then it get back, because Brian, Detective Vaughn. I said, see, B. Mickey, you was down. And you end up, you gonna get rammed up. And then last few minutes, Lamar takes B. Mickey's wife to see her daughter. And then she was in the back seat of the car. And then, of course, he had to hog tie her hands, which I didn't understand why. But she was happy to be back with her baby. She was happy to be back. And that was the end of the episode. And again, that was BMF Season 4, Episode 9. Point of no return. Really, really, really. And I put all the reallys. I put about 2-3 reallys out there. But that was the episode. Facebook. Well, I'm not going to say Facebook no more, y'all. YouTube family. I'm having a hard time, I see. Because I had it correct. And then I had to record the whole video over. But y'all forgive me. And this is my YouTube family. I want y'all to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm about to go ahead and get this set up for y'all right now. See y'all later, YouTube family. Smooches, smooches, smooches. Have a blessed, blessed day. And be on the lookout for the video. It'll be coming soon. Bye.